Welcome to the Soul Archaeology podcast, a space for connection, resonance, witnessing, and learning. Together we'll harvest medicine from the spiral of life, sharing conversations with other embodied humans who have navigated their own initiations and found alignment with their true soul essence. With weekly astrology, energy updates, embodied conversation, and channeled teachings, this is a space for you to land and find resonance with the spiral of your own soul. Welcome back to Soul Archaeology. I'm so happy to be here with you. My voice is back. It's still a little congested, but I'm feeling lots better and happy to be here to talk about this very big week, actually 2 weeks that we have coming up. So we have this week, of course, a lunar eclipse in Pisces, which is something we've been kind of talking about and anticipating, that occurs at 25 degrees Pisces at 7:34 p.m. Pacific on September 17th. So we start this week with a lunar eclipse. But just before that, we have a really lovely transit. We have Venus trine Jupiter on September 15th, so on Sunday. And this is really such a supportive transit. It really helps us drop into our desires, our bodies. It really helps us access the layers of beauty that are always available for us to access. Trines are supportive and harmonious aspects in astrology. It's when two planets land within 4 degrees of each other within the same element. And it just creates flow and ease and support as the two planets engage in really harmonious interactions. And of course, Venus and Jupiter are both benefic planets. So this is a really lovely triangulation interaction between both of these planets to create some harmony, some ease, which we really, really deserve. I have been in the North Woods of Wisconsin for the last week with family and really deepening into nature, spending time sunrise, sunset on the lake with the loons, really sort of interrupting my normal scheduling. And I was sick as well, so I had to really kind of, isolate and spend time alone and just really deepen into nature. The last few years have been really fast for me. They've been really intense and fast. I've been, building my business, doing a lot of work, really in my more Aries energy, which I know a lot of us have been since the North Node has been in Aries, and we've felt this intensity and this fire and this pressure to create, this pressure to respond to the evolutionary pulls. And so it's really interesting just to feel the subtle energy shift of this eclipse portal as it's pulling us more into the Piscean realms. So I really want to talk about eclipses, talk about the lunar nodes and how they really influence our evolutionary work here on this planet. Why this eclipse specifically is very unique, and how it's a foreshadowing of the energy we'll be navigating really into 2027, which is a very significant year. And eclipses occur when we have a full or new moon close to the lunar nodes, which are not celestial bodies, but actually points tied to the moon itself. So when we have a new or full moon that occurs close to the lunar nodes, we experience an eclipse. And eclipses are really realignments. They're evolutionary portals to help us reorient or pivot along our evolutionary path. Eclipses are a change point. It's where we interrupt the norm and reset. It's where we must surrender to the universal current, to trust, to deepen more into faith, and to really surrender and let go. Because eclipses are tied to our evolutionary path, they're tied to our lunar nodes, there's something deeply karmic about them. They are karmic storms that come in to help shift us if we become or deviated from our path. They're a reset. It's when everything goes dark. It's a beginning and an ending. So eclipses really magnify the existing energy of the full or new moon. So they're essentially, I know a lot of people say this, but full moons or new moons on steroids because they really amplify the evolutionary impact of these celestial events. So there's really this strong evolutionary layer or tone or flavor that's placed on top of an existing full or new moon because it's close to the lunar nodes. And the lunar nodes, like I said, are points that are connected to the moon. And I really work closely with the lunar nodes myself in my work with clients, because it's so helpful in understanding where we've been, our past, what has shaped us, our subconscious, and our future, our present and our future, where we're really headed, and the evolutionary lessons we're meant to learn here in this life. The lunar nodes are, in many ways, points of direction or focus. They can indicate to us where we are defaulting to old programs, old patterns, things that have been held in the past, and where we can shift more onto our higher path, which is the North Node. Because it's important to note we are always choosing. We're always choosing our reality. We're choosing the same, the familiar, the past, or we're choosing new, something different. And these choices are made from our consciousness, from our consciousness that has been molded and shaped by our experiences. As we know, the subconscious shapes 95% of our reality. So it's so important. One of the most important things we can do along this healing path is to create intimacy and awareness around our lived experiences, around our subconscious, and the programs, the patterns, the beliefs that are held within that space. Because it's from that point where we get to change the root, change the belief, change the pattern, and therefore change our lived reality. And I like to say that the South Node is our subconscious. It's our default. It's our innate wiring system. It really tells us karmically where we have been many times, the way we've lived. It really tells us our past, where we're pulling from. It's the tail of the dragon, so it's essentially what we're leaving behind. And the North Node is our North Star. It's not our comfort zone. It's not familiar, but is our destiny. I like to say the South Node is our karma, and the North Node is our dharma. And it's important to have both. It's important to note that we're not meant to simply let go of all of our South Node tendencies and characteristics, because our past shapes us. It creates the nutrient-rich soil of our being. It creates the medicine that we're able to pull from to help others, to show up for others in our lives with empathy and understanding. But we oftentimes hold unhealthy or unsupportive habits, patterns, beliefs within our past experiences as well, within our subconscious. And this is what we're meant to let go of. We're meant to integrate the light and the beauty of our South Node and release the shadow. It's important to note we all have a natal South and North Node, and this is a lot of what I work with when I'm working with clients and we're in a container and we're doing their astrology. I love to look at their South and North Node because it really gives us a near linear way to understand their tendencies, habits, and patterns. And what's cool about the South Node is it not only shows us where we've been in past lives, but it also tells us so much about our childhood, about our lived experiences within this life. And that's the cool thing about astrology, is that it can really foreshadow the energies and the environments that will be created within this life, because it's really shows us what we're meant to experience, what we're meant to learn here, what we're meant to integrate and release. So our South Node really quite literally represents our past, the familiar, the comfort zone, what we default to when we feel activated or triggered. The North Node is our North Star, so it's our destiny. And the North Node is so helpful in directing us and giving us clues along our path, the points or breadcrumbs that help us realign, that remind us that we are on the higher path. And in many ways, I see the North Node as a North Star. So it's a powerful guide in helping us stay in alignment with our higher self. The interesting thing about the North Node is it's not our comfort zone. So it's not something that we're naturally drawn to. We have to bring conscious effort and focus into stepping more into our North Node. So for example, I have a natal South Node in Virgo and a North Node in Pisces. So I'm entering my my nodal return, actually. And for me, it's such a journey in releasing my need to control, my need to know, the part of me that is always seeking perfectionism. It's conjunct my South Node. My South Node in Virgo is conjunct my Venus in Virgo. So there's a lot of old karmic data that I came into this life to heal, to release, to work through, to transmute. And my North Node in Pisces is all by itself in the 5th house. And it was interesting when I first started really learning about the nodes, I was in my Saturn return, and it was such an important piece and part of my journey because I was able to use the North Node as my North Star to help me realign and reorient along my path. And being a North Node in Pisces, definitely here to be a healer, here to be someone who's able to find peace, embrace beauty, embrace flow, to let go and surrender into the unknown. But that's certainly not my comfort zone. So it's been such a journey in embracing the beauty of my South Node in Virgo, but really, really learning how to find comfort within the unknown, to find comfort within my North Node in Pisces. So we all have natal North and South nodes. And it's really helpful to understand what yours are, to really get clear on your evolutionary path, where you're headed within this life, what you're here to learn and integrate. It can be really helpful in identifying some blind spots that we may have. And the North and South node actually change, the transiting North and South node change every 18 months. So this is what I mean when I say that the North and South node and the eclipses really shift our evolutionary path, both collectively and individually. So every 18 months, they enter a new axis. And right now they're in along the axis of Aries and Libra. So we've been in this deep, deep relational work. I've talked a lot about this. You can go back to episodes 13, 36, and 37, which really dive into the energy of these eclipses we've had along the Aries and Libra axis. It's so much of the work we've been doing around the self and the other. So how to really stay anchored to self when in relationship. And I'll talk more about that next week when we go into the solar eclipse in Libra on October 2nd. So when we talk about the South Node and the North Node through an evolutionary lens, the South Node is all about release. It's about letting go. It's what we've brought into this life from past lives. The karmic data, the childhood data, it's all bundled together within the South Node. It's the old pathways we've always been down, the heavily trodden path. It's where we hold contracts and traumas and patterns from the past. It's really what survives death and rebirth. The habits and patterns that drive our lives until we become conscious of them. The North Node is not our comfort zone. It's somewhere we haven't been before. It's the energy we're perhaps unfamiliar with, but it's really our guiding light. So these eclipses hold the energy of the south or north node. And really they're interacting because they're forming an opposition when they're activating each other. So there's always the influence of the north and south node when we're doing this work. It's really about balancing. And eclipses are checkpoints. They are karmic storms that come in and help us shift and redirect along that evolutionary path. So they can be quite intense. They can feel like a storm, quite literally. It can feel like a tornado. It can feel like things are whipping around. So much change is occurring that's out of your control because it's tied to your destiny. It's tied to your karma. It's tied to your evolution here. And although we have free will that gives us permission to interact with these experiences in whatever way we want, there are still things that or checkpoints that we must cross within our lives. So we typically have 2 eclipses every 6 months, and these eclipses they come in pairs, they occur 2 weeks from each other, so the exact timeline of a new and full moon. And each eclipse season activates a new 6-month window. So it opens a gateway or a door for the energy that we'll be navigating over the next 6 months. The lunar nodes stay in each sign for 18 months, like I said. So we are at the end, nearing the end of the Aries and Libra axis. The north node has been in Aries, the south node has been in Libra. We've been releasing old karmic data held within our relational framework, how we interact with self and the other. This eclipse season is unique because we have our first eclipse in Pisces. So the first introduction into the Pisces and Virgo axis, which we will fully enter in January of 2025. But because this works along a spectrum, we can actually have an eclipse in another sign that the lunar nodes are not in. And these are big transitionary points. They really show us what we're moving away from and moving into. So we're navigating and beginning to really navigate the transition from Aries and Libra to Pisces and Virgo. So in January of 2025, the north node will enter Pisces, the south node will enter Virgo, and we will really deepen into a focus on healing, spirituality, truth and consciousness, physical, emotional, spiritual health, emotions, and the mind. So the eclipse we have on September 17th at 25 degrees Pisces is the first taste of this axis of Virgo and Pisces. And we haven't been here since 2015 to 2017. It was the last time we had eclipses in Pisces and Virgo. And then it was the south node was in Pisces and the north node was in Virgo. So this is a different energy, but visiting similar themes. So I encourage you to think back to that time. What were you navigating then? So it would have been in March and September of 2015 and 2016 and February of 2017. The last time the North Node was in Pisces was 2006 to 2007. Now this eclipse is partial, which means it's a little bit weaker. We had a very intense and activating total solar eclipse in Aries earlier this year, which was such a huge activating energy. And I know a lot of you felt that it was such a huge turning point. So this eclipse is a little bit more subtle. The solar eclipse in Libra that we'll have on October 2nd is a little bit more intense. But because this eclipse is partial, it's not as activating. It's not as clear cut, perhaps. It is a supermoon, which means it's closer to the Earth. So there's this intensity to it, but it's emotionally intense. So there's a deep, watery feel to this eclipse. Pisces is, of course, a water sign. It's the mystic, the dreamer, the healer, the artist. Pisces represents our intuition. It's one consciousness, a unified self, a unified world. Pisces is the inner union of self and source. It's the unseen. It's psychic and sensitive. Pisces is the 12th sign of the zodiac. It's connected to the 12th house, so it represents endings and beginnings. It's a threshold, but it also is a sign of no separation. Piscean people are deeply empathic because they don't feel the separation between themselves and others, the world, source. It represents one consciousness. It also represents healing, just like its opposite, Virgo. But whereas Virgo is more tangible and tactile, grounded, physical, Pisces is much more ethereal. It represents spiritual healing, consciousness, emotional healing. Pisces is untethered. So, what I always tell my Piscean clients is grounding is essential. Grounding, rooting your body, rooting your being so that you can be and feel safe in the unknown, in the flow that Pisces so deeply desires. So often I find that Piscean people, whether you have your sun, your moon, your rising, maybe you have a lot of 12th house placements, but oftentimes Piscean people lack energetic boundaries. So spiritual hygiene is so essential. It's so essential during this time because we're in a very watery Piscean time. This is focused on health, on boundaries. Pisceans need more spiritual hygiene and boundaries than others because the auric field is so porous and sensitive. Because Pisces is able to dissolve the separation between self and others. It can be quite porous. So it absorbs a lot. It feels so much, which is why the shadow of Pisces is escapism. Feeling the overwhelm of experiencing so much, the overstimulation of being in this physical body. The shadow of Pisces is escapism. It's bypassing or drifting, dissociation, being boundaryless, and actually addictions of all kinds, not just substance abuse and substance addiction, but Netflix and social media. Anything that pulls you out of the intensity of the present can be seen as addiction. It's a coping mechanism and a way to process so much of what it feels. I notice my people who have a lot of 12th house placements or a lot of Piscean placements almost always lean towards some sort of coping mechanism, whether it be addictive habits and patterns, behaviors, escapism, dissociation. It can even show up as getting lost in things, becoming obsessive with things, sort of losing touch with reality. Whatever pulls you out of presence. Pisces shadow can also be hidden secrets, daydreaming, or fantasizing. When I say it's untethered, it can easily float away. It can get lost in the unseen. And Pisces is the mystic, so it's also just such an incredible strength to be able to access what's unseen. It's really the sign of spirituality. But of course, because there's always a light and shadow to all signs, it's important to look to Virgo for the remedy of the Piscean shadow, which is anchoring, rooting, grounding, tending to the physical, tending to the rational, staying present with what is here and now. Virgo's analytical. It's practical. The shadow of Virgo is being too in the mind, too rigid, which is how Pisces balances it with faith and surrender, trust and flow. Pisces is the current of consciousness, the universal current that guides us down our path. Because Pisces can be untethered, it can look to Virgo to create structure, practicality, and devotion. So these are the themes that we'll notice coming up well into 2027. The nodes shift into Virgo and Pisces in January. The energy is beginning to build with our first eclipse this week along this axis, and will really foreshadow the themes that will navigate 2025, 2026, and even into February of 2027 when we have our last eclipse along this axis. And it's important to remember these are karmic. These are focused on our evolution individually and collectively. So these come in to help guide us along our path. They bring us into the work that's needed here and now in order to grow and evolve and change collectively and individually. And this is a unique crossing. We're crossing backwards from the first house to the 12th house. So we're moving from self, a focus of self, to a focus of one consciousness, unity, the collective consciousness. We're moving from this focus on, or this navel gazing, this focus on the self and the development of self into an up level in how we can create unity, how we can see each other reflected in the other, even in our quote unquote enemies or the people we disagree with. How can we find that unified heart, the space between each one of us that is the same? Separation is an illusion. This life is Earth School. We're here to learn. We're here to grow. We're here to evolve. Love unites and fear separates. That's how you know the difference. And Pisces will be here to teach us this, and we could not receive it at a better time. We need it so desperately because Pisces is such an evolved sign and it's light. It will really highlight the difference in consciousness on this planet, the bifurcation or the illusion of separation. It's really, really important to note, to understand, to integrate the knowing that not every single person is on the same evolutionary path. Although we are all one, we're having different experiences on this planet, in this 3D realm. And it is not our job to control the experience of others. It is not our job to control the evolutionary focus of others. It is not our job to judge the choices and behaviors of others. Pisces encourages us to zoom out, to see the higher perspective, to access your higher self within this lived experience. In its most evolved state, it's asking for us to pull from the deep roots of Virgo, the groundedness, the spiritual, emotional, energetic, and physical hygiene that keeps us held within this body in a safe, resourced, grounded, and regulated way, to be able to see the illusion of separation between you and another and still choose love. On both sides of the poles, there's so much hatred. There's so much judgment. It's so deeply regressive. It's not progressive, it's regressive. And this time will ask for us to sit with our inner experience, to look at the experiences we've had, what we're pulling from, where our fear is coming from, that makes us so afraid of the other, so afraid of those who believe differently than us, who look differently than us. This North Node in Pisces will pull us into finding comfort in the unknown. This time might feel floaty. It might feel murky. This is not necessarily a time of direction or clarity. Because Pisces is ethereal, it represents the unseen. This time might feel watery, emotional, dreamy, even confused. This is where we find our root, our anchor. This is where we refine our self-care, our resourcing, our self-regulation tools. where we return to what we know to be true and anchor into that while leaving so much space for gray, for nuance, for the unknown. Whenever I think of the highest expression of Pisces, I think of kelp. How it's so deeply rooted into the ocean floor, how it has its roots, how it has its foundation, but remains fluid. It flows with the current, it moves with the current, it dances with the flow of water. It's so strong and so soft at the same time. Even when it pulls out from its anchor, it floats. Pisces and Virgo are mutable signs, along with Gemini and Sagittarius, which means they like change. They're here to help us change, to detour, to pivot, to reroute, to be open and fluid. Because this eclipse occurs at 25 degrees Pisces, anyone who has placements in the mutable signs from 21 to 29 degrees will feel this the most. So if you have Pisces, Virgo, Sagittarius, or Gemini placements at 21 to 29 degrees, you'll feel this most intensely. And this is an interesting shift. This will be our last set of eclipses before the nodes shift into Pisces and Virgo in January. We'll still have an eclipse in Aries next year, but this is really starting to set the tone for our evolutionary focus, the flavor, the energy we'll be navigating over the next 2 years. We're moving from a focus on the self with the North Node in Aries, crossing backwards into the dissolution of self. In many ways, we're returning to our original blueprint, our original self, point of inner union with self and source. This will be a deeply, deeply spiritual and transcendent time, and really shows us where some of our deepest karmic work is held. These next few years, really, we've been navigating this deeply intense karmic work for most of our lives, but especially since 2012. And it really continues and begins to intensify with this nodal shift into Pisces and Virgo. It will ask for us to up-level our self-care, our rituals, our practices, to really think about what we're devoted to. I think sometimes we forget that the choices we make show what we're truly devoted to. Are we devoted to spiritual healing, to evolution and growth, or are we devoted to fear? Are we devoted to separation? It will ask for us to let go of the need to control our circumstances and others. This is the axis of faith, confronting our mind's desire to understand everything, to be able to quantify and understand every single thing that happens, and instead leave some space for miracles, for faith, for the unknown and the unseen. I think we'll see a lot coming through around the axis of spirituality and science, which are actually one and the same. And I kind of giggle when people say, trust the science, because science is always changing and evolving. There's so much unknown and unseen, so many variables within science, just like spirituality. And I think as a species, we will quantum leap when we start to merge that illusion of separation between spirituality and science. When we're able to sit with the nuance, to sit with the gray, this is the work of Pisces, finding comfort in the unknown. The separation we experience as a collective is a direct result of our fear of the gray, our fear of nuance, our fear of the unknown. When we can't understand something about someone else, when we don't understand their experiences, when we don't understand where they're coming from, when we don't understand and we can't sit with the unknown of our circumstances, it's terrifying. And so many people need to control the other in order to feel safe. I invite you to sit with where you are trying to control yourself, your life, the people within your lives, your circumstances, because it leads to suffering. So these nodes are shifting into place at the perfect time, exactly when we need it. The next few years will be tumultuous. They'll be rocky. We will need our faith more than ever. We will need our anchors more than ever. And that's truly the work of the highest expressed Pisces, is to be able to navigate the fear of the unknown, to be able to navigate chaos and stimulation and be present with it, to not escape, to not run away, but to remember you have a toolbox to help you navigate this time, to stay anchored and resourced, grounded. Presence is the medicine. Staying anchored and leaving room for the unknown, for the miracles. The dream space is highly active. This eclipse will actually be interacting with Saturn, Neptune, and Jupiter, all in mutable signs. So it's really having us confront our relationship with change. I've talked a lot about that in recent episodes because our relationship with change, our relationship with the unknown, is really what drives the fear, that's driving the tribal mentality, that's driving the chaos in the world right now. So look to where you have your mutable signs cross in your chart. Where you have Pisces, this will be highly activated over the next 20 months. Where you have Virgo, this will be highly activated over the next 20 months. We will have eclipses in Virgo and Pisces until February of 2027. So you'll hear me talk a lot about these themes over the next 2 years. We're in this together. We are on this ride together, folks. It'll be a pretty interesting shift. I've been having absolutely wild dreams over the last week as we kind of continue to build towards this eclipse. Over the next 2 days, the moon will cross Saturn, so it will activate that loose squaring happening between Saturn and Jupiter, which has been active since really mid-August, asking for us to once again revisit our relationship with control, with change, and also what are our dreams, our fantasies? What's our higher vision? How can we anchor that into the physical plane right now? How can we start to take practical, actionable steps to manifest our dreams into reality while keeping a loose grip on it, while keeping, and creating space for the unknown, space for miracles to come through? I am personally so excited for this access to fully click in. I think that we need it desperately. It's not easy work, but it's essential. And this is really the upgrade and the up level, the quantum leap we need collectively and individually. I am personally entering my nodal return. I love Piscean energy. I think it's ethereal, artistic, beautiful. And I know I'm always seeking more of that in my life. This is also a great eclipse to spend by water, to spend in water. It can be a warm bath, it could be a shower, it can be the ocean or a lake or a river, a creek. Just get yourself in some water. It helps to download the medicine of water, the fluidity, the flow, the ease, the surrender. Because eclipses come in pairs, we always open an eclipse window the month before and the month after the last eclipse. So we will be within this space until the end of October. The 2-week period of time between eclipses is highly charged. It's a time of serendipity, sometimes chaos. Things come in, things move out quickly. It's a very intense time. I'll talk more about that next week. But it's really, really an important time to anchor, to lean into nature, to lean into your creative pursuits, to sit with and attune to your inner child. Whatever grounds you, that is the medicine of now. Trust that you are being brought where you need to go, but it is your job to respond from your higher self. Just a reminder, I have a really powerful eclipse portal workshop that I'm hosting on September 17th, the day of the eclipse at 9 a.m. Pacific. I know it's, working hours for many of you, so No worries at all if you can't make it live. I love these workshops. They're so deep and juicy, and they really kind of prepare you for what's to come, especially, this eclipse portal that we're in and the 2 weeks in between eclipses. There's a lot of energy you can work with. I'll talk about some of the things we discussed today, but we'll do a really deep quantum healing journey as well to access the magic that's available during this time to really harness the transformative energy. There's also Q&A afterwards, so it's a really great value for the amount of time that we spend in this workshop. You also get, lifetime access to replay it. You can replay this workshop as often as you want throughout eclipse season. It will actually be one that will be helpful over the next 2 years as well. So the link for that will be in the show notes. I'd love to see you all there. It's such a fun time. I love seeing all of your faces. I am also working on creating a membership, which I'm super, super excited about, where you'll have access to new moon and full moon workshops every month, extra podcast episodes, extended podcast episodes. So I'm very excited about that. And I do have 2 spots available for private mentorship this fall. This is the last time I'll run it this year. And because I'm reworking a lot, it probably won't look the same next year. But I love, love, love this container. It's a really deep, intimate 3-month container where we focus on the integration of self. So accessing the deepest parts of yourself, repairing the fragmentation, and realigning, recentering with self and with source. If you're interested in that, I encourage you to book a clarity call. If you can't find a time, my schedule is really booked up for this the next 2 months. So if you can't find a time, just DM me, send me a message, send me an email, and I'm happy to squeeze you in somewhere. So just let me know. Thank you all, as usual, for being here, for being present, for bringing yourself, bringing your consciousness, bringing your heart to this podcast. It's always felt, it's always appreciated. Anytime you share on social media, it helps me so much. If you share it with a friend, it just truly means the world. I adore all of you. Thank you for being here. Happy eclipse. I hope to see you at the workshop, and have a beautiful, beautiful week.